Hello and welcome to Genesis, the language of creation. I am Rabbi Rafi Mallet, everybody's Rebbe. Tonight's class, in fact, all of this week's classes were dedicated by John Volkoff in memory of his father, Steve John Volkoff. I said a few words about him in Sunday's class. His father, blessed memory, he credits with raising him with an inquisitive mind, with the love of scripture, with a mind to ask tough, critical questions and critical thinking, which led him through his studies and inquisitiveness and exploration to reach where he is now in his life, in his journey, in his walk with God, as currently identifying as a Noahide. And so we'd like to continue to dedicate tonight's class for him. And that's all I want to say about that. I want to thank our members. If you want to support the channel, you can become a member, join the channel as a member. You can also make a more generous donation if you would like, using any of the donation links in the channel description. And you can sponsor a class, dedicate a class. And if you'd like to join our mailing list, email me, rabbi@rafimallet.com. You can also join our WhatsApp chat. Just ask to do so in the email. You can also support this channel by shopping at artscroll.com using my link, artscroll.com/Rebbe Rafi, REBBI RAFI. Once again, I want to thank all the members. I'm thinking maybe on a monthly basis, I'll read off the names of the members as an acknowledgement, but I don't want to take so much time away from the class too frequently. So thank you all for being here. We have in studio, we have Avigail. We have a new student in the studio. And do you want to introduce yourself, new student? You could.
Sure. My name is Sawyer, and I'm happy to be joining.
Yeah, we're great. We're grateful to have you, Sawyer. Also, Trey Bishop is unable to join in the studio tonight because of some weather events in his locale, but he said he will join in the chat, YouTube chat. We have in the YouTube chat, Lyrical Priest, my very good friend. It's wonderful to have you here. Colin Martin, great to see you. Tim Flanagan, hello. Here's Trey in the YouTube chat. Liza Sparks. And, good point. Trey says, if you haven't dropped the like yet, do it real quick to show pops. So the show will pop up in people's feed. That's true. Tell the algorithm you like this video. Hit like in general, like, share, etc. to bring more attention to these videos. Colin Martin is glad to be here. Okay, so like I said, I'd like this class to be kind of as open and easygoing as possible. Everyone should feel free to contribute. To join the studio, I'll put a link in the chat. You can join. You can join using the link I put in the chat if you want to be live in the studio. People in the studio can speak in real time. Obviously, I'll try to respond to chat comments when it is convenient to do so. Okay, so last time, here's our text. I need to enlarge it to like 200% maybe. So last time we spoke about, in the last couple of classes, I should say, the first verse, Bereshit bara Elohim et hashamayim ve'et haaretz. Either in the beginning God created the heavens and the earth, or in the beginning of God's creating the heavens and the earth, ... And the next verse, v'haaretz hayetza tohu vavohu. Last time we did, and the earth was tohu vavohu, which we struggled to translate. Tohu, we said, again, some of the suggestions were this could be desolate and empty, could mean astonishingly empty. or tohu, we said, was some type of primordial energy, and bohu was primordial matter emerging from the energy. We had different ways of understanding this based on the various commentaries. And now we're up to the next phrase in verse number 2. Any questions or comments before we go ahead? Okay. As usual, please feel free to interrupt at any time. So let me see if I can make this even bigger. Can I? Yeah. How do you like that? Okay. So the earth was tohu and bohu, which we just explained, sort of explained, as much as you could explain such a thing. V'choshech. Okay. The next word. Ooh, I got the little pop-up on the side. We have the next word, v'choshech. So as we established before, the vav prefix means and then we have the word choshech. Does anyone know what the word choshech means? Go ahead and speak up.
Darkness.
Choshech is darkness. Okay, that's pretty simple, straightforward, right? Meaning it's a straightforward translation. What exactly it refers to conceptually over here, we'll leave open for now. But let's just work on the translation, and then we'll entertain any questions. Okay, v'choshech and darkness. Al, what's al?
On.
Al is on, and darkness on. Penei. Okay, let's take a look at the word penei. This is a little bit of a complex word. Penei is based on the Hebrew word panim. Now, what I thought to do this time, as I was reflecting on in previous classes, is maybe to create a little Google Doc with like notes. Let me see if I can do that. Let's see, Genesis notes, we'll call it. And I'll just share the tab. We have a blank Google Doc over here. And so I'm going to do my best to try to present to you what it is I'm explaining. So Penei, let's grab that word over here. Okay, I'm going to grab it. I'm going to copy it, paste it into this little Google Doc here. There it is. We want that to be bigger. Let's enlarge it to like 96%. Yeah. So Penei is based on the Hebrew word panim. Do my best to type in Hebrew. It's not so easy. Okay, panim. Now, what does the word panim mean? If you know, please speak up.
Face.
Panim means face. Now, what's interesting about the word panim, well, or maybe you could tell me what's strange about the word panim that it means face.
It's plural.
It's plural. So for those of you who have some experience with Hebrew, and we had it already, we talked about God's name Elohim and how that's a plural noun, even though it refers to a singular entity. Shamayim, heavens, right? Plural. And now we have the word panim. So panim has this suffix. The suffix is this circular vowel here, the little dot under the nun, which is e, and yud mem. So together that suffix would say im. So panim indicates there's a plural here. And what the singular of this word is not abundantly clear, because it almost never appears in any kind of singular form. And therefore, I don't want to get into it at this stage. But face, what we translate as face in English, in Hebrew is the word panim, which is plural. Okay. So the question is, why? Why is the word panim meaning face plural? Now, we have spoken about this in some of my other series. So if somebody remembers that, wants to answer, or has their own answer, please chime in. Why is the word panim meaning face plural? So here is some insight that I've offered on this before. The reason panim is plural, there are a couple interesting reasons. Number one is that the face has a symmetry to it. There's a certain doubling. There's a doubling of the facial features. Everything is kind of mirrored in a symmetry, and that is somewhat symbolized in the plural form. Like we have also like yadayim, hands. These are what's called in Hebrew zugot, pairs of things. Yadayim, raglayim, like the whole body is made in pairs. So when I have just one side, yad, right, hand, regel, foot, but together, you know, yadayim, raglayim. It's almost like the two sides of the face. You know, I have like my profile here as one side, and then I have my profile there, and then this is the two of them combined. Okay, that's panim. That's one. Number two is that the face is extremely expressive. You could almost say that no one has one face, because I have my happy face, and I have a sad face, and I have my angry face, and I have my surprised face. And the face is such a dynamic part of the body. There's just so many muscles in the face that allow us to change the face, change the shape of our face to produce so many different expressions, dozens and dozens of expressions, that the word in Hebrew for face expresses just how expressive the face is, and the various changes, and how many different modes or moods we can manifest just on this canvas here. So there are many, our face is really many faces. So there's an interesting insight that I mentioned in another class about this. I'm not sure if I should talk about it now or not, but maybe I'll leave it aside because I want to make some progress. But that I would say those are some insights on the Hebrew word face and why it's in the plural. Okay. Any questions on
Rabbi?
what I just said? Yeah.
Yeah, in modern Hebrew, when you use the word panim, just in general language, do you have a sense of the complexity of it? Like in English, if we say face, we just think of a singular face. But in
No.
no,
When people say the word panim, they just mean face, like you mean face when you say it in English. But I'm trying to give you what we're calling Yiddish the kishkis, the guts of what's behind this language. Okay, no one thinks about that when they speak. People aren't thinking deep philosophy when they speak. They're just saying words.
yeah, thank you.
Okay, so yeah, fine. So that now, how do we get from panim to pene? So let's go a little further. When I want to express the construct form of a plural masculine, okay, so let's just go to masculine. This is the plural masculine ending, the im ending. A plural feminine ending would be this. Ot, okay? This is the O vowel. This is the tough T sound. Ot. So ot is the female, the feminine plural ending. Okay, we talked before about the singular female ending, which is the kamatz. That's not a kamatz. The kamatz hey. Okay, the a ending is singular female. Ot is plural female. I'm just trying to think of some examples off the top of my head. Here, let's take the word bain in Hebrew. Ben. Okay, so what does this word mean? Anyone know?
Son.
Son, as in not the sun in the sky, the son in a family, father and son. So when I want to say multiple sons, plural, so the word is banim. Banim. I've added the im ending to the word bain. And yes, I grant you the vowels change when we add a suffix. It is what it is. You're just going to have to kind of memorize these changes. But im is the masculine plural ending. Now, here's the word bat. Bat means daughter. Okay. Now, this is not a great example because it's confusing in a different way. The plural for daughter is confusing. So ignore the part that's confusing. The plural for daughter is actually banot. So I know that we didn't add ot to bat and make it batot. I grant you that. We kind of took the word ben, right, meaning son, and we added the ot ending to it. So instead of banim, sons, Instead of banim for sons, I have banot for daughters. But what I want you to get from that is that this im ending is masculine and the ot ending is feminine. Okay, fine. Now let's get back to panim. When I want to use the construct form in a masculine plural noun, construct means I'm adding the word of. Like I want to say face of. So the way that's done is with this suffix. Okay, that's supposed to be a yud. I know this isn't the best font. Maybe we could change the font to like Times New. Okay, it looks more like a yud, right? And it's a. Okay, a. That sound, this a sound with a yud, which doesn't change the pronunciation. A is the suffix, which is construct form for plural masculine noun. So panim, therefore, I take away the im, I subtract the im, and I add the a in its place, and I get pene. Pene means faces or face of. It's a little deceptive because it's plural. It even throws me off. But it's really singular, though it's plural, if you know what I mean. It's one of those. So, pene. Okay? So here we are. Oh, I took the wrong pene. It comes up twice in this verse. V'choshech al pene, and darkness on face of.
Rabbi, you haven't gone back to the
Oh,
text.
sorry. Thank you. V'choshech al pene, and darkness on face of, and now we have the word Tehom. If you were in my Jonah class, you know what Tehom is. Does anyone know the translation of the word Tehom over here? Okay.
I'm going to guess deep.
Well, that's because you know the translation of the first few verses in Genesis. That's why this is like a bad exercise, because everybody knows already what this is. So, and I'm sorry that the words are a little obscured by my picture, but it says Tehom. Let me grab that word. Whatever. It says Tehom. You have to take my word for it. Tehom, she says, means deep. Yes and no, meaning yes. The answer is yes. But when I say deep and when you say deep, most people are thinking, oh, deep, like an adjective. Deep water, deep thought, right? That would actually not be the word Tehom. That would be the word amok in Hebrew. Amok. Amok means deep. Tehom is a noun. It's like the deep, right? And when you talk about the deep, what do you think of when I say the word the deep? And I mean it as a noun, not an adjective. The deep what?
I still think of water, just
okay,
because of
good.
years of context. Yeah.
Trey says I think of abyss. Okay, abyss, which means like a deep, like bottomless pit, right? An abyss, and even deep water can be called an abyss. So that's not a bad translation. Abyss, I would accept that translation. Just a bit of an obscure word. So deep, generally the deep, someone said empty space. Okay, keep that in mind. So generally the deep is associated with the deep water almost everywhere in Tanakh. However, I just want to point out that it doesn't necessarily have to mean that. Just by association, it typically means that. But the deep means the deep something, like the expanse, if you will, the expanse. So, and it's interesting that you could see even a relationship between Tehom over here and the word tohu over here. Okay, that tohu we said is this like astonishing nothingness, and you can think of an abyss. An abyss would be like a good manifestation of the concept of an astonishing nothingness. So, okay, so we have v'choshech al penei tehom, and darkness on face of the deep. All right, now obviously there are words missing that we have to add in for the English idiom, and these are what you might call implied words. Okay, so and darkness is Again, this is telling us something that happened. So was, there's no state of being verb. So we have to just infer it. V'choshech al panei Tehom, and darkness was on the face of the deep. Okay? So far we have, and the earth and the land was astonishingly empty, desolate and empty, emerging from primordial energy and matter, different thing, whatever tohu vavohu is. That was last class. And darkness was on the face of the deep. Any questions on that translation so far? The deep, darkness on the face of the abyss, darkness on the face of the expanse. Any of those are acceptable.
I was just wondering about darkness.
Yeah.
Does it have a? Does it ever have a meaning of like wickedness, badness, that kind of darkness?
Yes. Yes. Does that answer your question?
Partly.
Okay. Is there more?
Yeah. Why? Is there a thought here that there is wickedness here?
Maybe.
Okay, I'll let you expand when you want to expand.
Okay. Now, I just, the reason I'm being so sparing in my remarks is because I want to focus on the purpose of the series, which is to teach you the language. Okay. The concepts are great and amazing and mind-blowing and wonderful, but they'll take time to unravel. And I don't want to take time away from the purpose of the class for a different purpose. So I'm trying to restrain myself from going into that. And I'll say one more thing, especially in the opening verses of Genesis, because here, let me show you something, okay? I want to show you something. Let's take a look, okay? Safaria. Okay, I'm going to go over to my resources. I'm going to go to the commentaries here. We'll go to, now Ramban, you could see is ghosted out. So he doesn't comment on this verse. But it could be, does he comment on the next verse? He does, obviously. I'm looking for a particular comment. Okay. Now, I don't know if you'll notice this. It's a little hard to see because since the text is blown up so much. But let me unblow up the text for a minute. Let's go back to the 100% view. Okay. Here's the Ramban's comments on verse 3. Okay. Here are his comments on verse, not 2, verse 1. Let's take a look. Na 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 na. Ya na 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 na. Na 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 na. Ya na na. Pretty lengthy, right? On the first verse of Genesis. He is unpacking so much about the process of creation here. A lot of it based on mysticism and Kabbalah. Okay. Okay. Just so imagine I had to explain all that to you. I can't explain it to myself. Let me be honest. Huh? I'm totally mystified. But imagine just one commentary. I would try to unpack what's going on, okay, in the creation. Now, I want to take you to verse 3. He has comparatively fewer comments. And after all these comments, right, it seems like he knows a lot about this. Look how much he has to say. Look how explanatory he is. Here, look at his remarks here. Now I'm going to blow it up again. Okay. At the end of verse 3, he says, "V'haperush b'sidur haketuvim bazen nisgav v'nelam." And the explanation of these verses is nisgav, is very high, very elevated, v'nelam, and very hidden. Like, these are very lofty concepts that are very esoteric. That's what he's saying. V'datenu bo, and our knowledge of this, he says, pachot mitipa min hayam hagadol. That means our knowledge of this, he's talking about himself. Unless he's talking about us in general, like us scholars or us human beings, is pachot, is less mitipa, less than a drop, min hayam hagadol, less than a drop of the great sea. Which sea is he referring to? Yam hagadol. Is it the Mediterranean Sea? Is it the Atlantic Ocean? Whichever one it is, he's saying our knowledge of this, our understanding of the creation is less than a drop in the ocean. And that's a person, again, that's a person who had this much to say about one verse. And he's telling us our knowledge in this is less than a drop in the ocean. I think that's a very important introduction to trying to explain Genesis, trying to explain the creation. And that's one commentary. And Safari has dozens. So the bottom line is, I don't know. You don't know. We don't know. Nobody knows. And part of Ramban's first comment in the book is, since we don't understand this anyway, I've said this many times, why does the Torah even bother to tell it to us? And he says, I'm truncating what he says, because of the moral lessons that we can learn from it for how to apply it to our lives and be good, righteous human beings. What moral lessons can we learn from such stories? Lots. And that's the purpose of the book. As Rabbi Jonathan Sacks of blessed memory famously said, when it comes to science versus Genesis, right? He says, the science tells us the what of the creation. The Torah tells us the why of creation. This is not a science book and it's not a history book. It's a book of moral instruction. So I'm meant to derive from here some moral lessons. And that, I want to say, is good and dandy, but not our purpose in this course. Although I hope you'll gain a lot in that area also. But I don't want to make that the focus, if that makes sense.
Sure. I was just trying to get a feeling of whether evil had already been created here.
Okay. If there's time, I'll make a comment at the end. Let's translate the verse. You with me?
Absolutely.
Okay. You're drawing pictures in our minds that assist in sticking the words to ideas. I dig what's going on. I know you're a very visual learner. I know that about you. Question, does it have anything to do with disputing the Babylonian creation story? I don't know. I never really heard that. I don't think the Torah was a response to the Babylonian creation story. I think the Torah stands on its own as God's teaching, the divine word. It also is a polemic against idolatry, but that as the idolatry develops in the story, we find that response comes into being. Now, okay. It's annoying to me that the text gets covered up by my picture. I want to see if I could adjust that in some way. Is that any better? A little, maybe if I move the text up. Yeah, that's better. Okay. And the earth was desolate and empty, or whatever alternative. And darkness was over the face of the deep. Okay, ready to move on? Let's move on. Veruach. So again, vav prefix. And ruach. What is ruach? Go, if you know, speak.
Spirit.
She says spirit. Good. What else is ruach?
Breath.
Not necessarily.
Wind?
Wind. Who is that, Sawyer?
Yes.
Good. Wind. And we have Colin with wind, T-Vision with breath. Breath only in as much as spirit. It's not so much breath. I'm not saying it can't be breath, but that would already be like stretching it. Literally breath, literally wind or spirit. Okay. And ruach and wind or spirit. And then we have the next word. Ooh, Elohim. What's that? Anyone?
I don't want to keep answering.
Well, there's no
God?
one else here. Well, it's you and Sawyer, but you
Yeah.
don't have to answer. You can stay quiet. That's fine.
God?
God. Okay. Good. That's one possibility. Anyone know another possibility here? Okay, so let's say it's spirit. I want you to think. Spirit, God. Put it together. Spirit of God. Let me just pause for that. Oh, someone is suggesting here powers. Powers. Yes. 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 Okay. We said this name of God means powers. That's what it means. So, if let's just go with the first, God, okay? So then this spirit, God. How do I get spirit of God? So we would need a construct form. And yet, if you know the word ruach is not a construct form, it's ruach. It stands on its own. Wind, spirit. Where's the construct? Where's the of? The answer is it is implied. Why is it implied? It's somewhat intuitive. Now, what would be the construct form of ruach? And here's why it's implied. Because what is the construct form of ruach? There is none. There is none. The construct form of ruach is ruach. The word ruach does not change in the construct form. Why? Kacha, that's the way it is. So ruach could mean both wind or spirit, or wind of, or spirit of. It really depends on what comes next in the verse. So you need to judge based on the context whether or not there's a construct here. Here, it's obvious that there is one. Okay. I'm wondering if I should address modern Hebrew or not. For now, I won't. Okay. Maybe I will. In modern Hebrew, when you want to say of, and does anyone know how to say of in modern Hebrew? Okay. Let me get if you do, speak up. The word of in modern Hebrew is shell. Okay. You guys see that? Shell. Of. So if I wanted to say the Spirit of God in modern Hebrew, I would say haruach. Haruach, I would add the definite article, the Spirit, shell of Elohim, the Spirit of God. However, what many people don't realize is the word shell is pretty foreign to the Tanakh. I didn't go to a concordance, I have to confess to you. But off the top of my head, I can't think of anywhere in Tanakh that the word shell appears. And if you want to go check a concordance and let me know, please let me know. Because my understanding of the development of the word shell, it's a word that pops up in rabbinic Hebrew in like the Mishnaic period, is that shell evolved from the prefix she, which means that, and the prefix lamed, which means for. So if I want to say I don't know, here's a good example. Here's a good example. When we make the blessing over the Hanukkah candles, there are two versions of the blessing, and there are different customs over which version of the blessing to say. Some say lehadlik ner shel Hanukkah, to light the candle shell of Hanukkah. And some say lahadlik ner Hanukkah, which also means to light the candle of Hanukkah. Why? Because there's no construct form for the word ner, meaning candle. It is both stands on its own as candle, or it can mean candle of, depending on the context and whether there's a noun following it, that this is the candle of that thing. So when you say ner Hanukkah, it means candle of Hanukkah. But some people say ner shel Hanukkah, and the word shel means of, literally. But that word is, I don't think, is original or authentic to biblical Hebrew, but rather we can find some older texts that have this version of the blessing. She, ready for this? You're going to fall out of your chair. You're not, because you probably don't realize how impressive what I'm about to tell you is. You don't even have the context to know how mind-blowing this is. She, many of you, sadly, but it's reality. Shelichanuka. There's a blessing. No one has ever heard of this before. Here, there's a mistake here. This vowel should be this vowel. Okay. Shelichanuka. To light the candle Shelichanuka. How would you read that? Prefix she, that, le, for Hanukkah. To light the candle Shelichanuka, that is for Hanukkah. The candle Shelichanuka, the candle that is for Hanukkah. So at some point, this became detached, and the prefix sheli, that is for, just became its own word. So the candle that is for Hanukkah is what we say in English, the candle of Hanukkah. And that's where the word shel in modern Hebrew came from. It really comes from a rabbinic Hebrew, which is a development later than biblical Hebrew. But you don't have this word in biblical Hebrew, shel. So therefore, rather than saying in the verse, Ruach Shel Elohim, the spirit of God, and if you know modern Hebrew, you understand more what I'm saying right now. There's just no shell. It's Ruach Elohim. And in that context, it becomes a construct. It's an implied construct. The spirit of God. Okay? I hope that made some sense. Okay? Hope that made some sense. So when we get back to the verse, I hope I didn't confuse everybody. When we get back to the verse, Ruach Elohim, the spirit of God. Okay, so I just want, and also in the construct form, the definite article is also implied. So Ruach Elohim, spirit of God, means the spirit of God. And the word the definite article, and the of, and the construct are both implied here. And the spirit of God. Here's another idea. What if it would be Veruach means wind? And Elohim refers to power. Then what would Ruach Elohim mean?
The wind of power.
The wind of power, or
the power of wind.
We wouldn't say the power of. How about a powerful wind? So to speak, a wind of powers, meaning imagine there was powers that were driving this wind. Okay, a powerful wind. Colin Martin nailed it over here. Okay, and a powerful wind. I'm just throwing out possibilities. I'm not negating the first possibility, and I'm not ratifying the second possibility, but I'm telling you that both possibilities are considered by the commentaries. Okay? And they should therefore also be considered by you when you're translating. Let's think of either one, either the spirit of God or a powerful wind, because again, there's no definite article here. So there's no reason it can't be a powerful wind or the spirit of God, because where the definite article would be implied. Okay. Mrachfet. Okay, mrachfet. Very difficult word. Not a common verb in Hebrew. So the shoresh, rachaf, it almost doesn't come up. What does it do over here? No definitions found for rachaf. You see that? Doesn't even have a definition for this. What do we do with this word? Now, what's clear is this. This mem is not a prefix mem that is not, see, Sfar doesn't know what it's talking about. Menashe, what are you talking about? Ignore. This mem is not a prefix mem meaning from. That would be a mem with a vowel, either a chirik e, me, or tsere a, me. That would mean from. This is just part of the verb conjugation. There's certain verbs that get conjugated with a mem in front of it. Maybe that's beyond what we're going to discuss in this class, but you should recognize that a mem especially a mem with a shiva underneath it, like this one, me, is the sort of it's the beginning of a verb where the shoresh, the 3-letter root, follows it, which would be resh fe, merachef. If it would be merachef, that would be masculine, and merachefet with the taf at the end makes it feminine, as we mentioned last class, that the feminine endings are either, let's look at our notes. The feminine endings are either kamatz, like right over here, a, or the letter taf. The letter taf can indicate feminine. Okay. So let me say it this way. In the present tense verb form, okay, in the present tense verb form, let's make some notes. How do I undo that? In the present tense verb form, present, I can make it smaller now. What's good? 30. Present tense verb. For this shoresh and many shorashim, it depends on what shoresh we're dealing with, but in this case, as we can see in the text, okay, for the shoresh rachaf, the feminine form will get a this vowel pattern. Why isn't it letting me write it here? And a taf. Okay, so I'll highlight this in yellow. The yellow will indicate the shoresh. Okay, and the taf suffix will highlight in blue. Okay, now you're right. I have to add this mem in the front for this particular verb form. Has a mem in the front. We'll see a lot of verbs like that. Okay, but the important parts of the word are the shoresh, and this suffix tells you it's feminine, and the listen to what I'm saying now. This pattern under the second shoresh letter, under the third shoresh letter, followed by taf, indicates the present tense. Okay, the present tense feminine. I left out a vowel. Mirachefet, the present tense feminine form. So that tells you, okay, so listen, the Spirit of God, or the great powerful wind, is doing this verb, and the verb is expressed in the feminine. If this verb is expressed in the feminine, what does that tell you about the noun ruach?
It's feminine.
It's a feminine noun. And again, we have a second instance, before even having a single instance the other way, of a feminine noun that does not follow the typical form of feminine nouns. Because we said a feminine noun will normally end with this, kamatz or taf. And this feminine noun does not, just like aretz we had last time. Aretz does not end with kamatz or taf, and yet it's also feminine. Aretz hayata, was. Land was, hayata, feminine. So we meet right away in Genesis two exceptional nouns, aretz and ruach, that are both feminine, even though they don't appear feminine. Okay, they look like masculine verbs, but they're really feminine. They look like masculine nouns, but they're really feminine nouns. Let me go back to the text. Okay, so ruach is feminine. The ruach, the spirit of God, is merakhafet. And what does merakhafet mean? Here it tells you, oh, suddenly rachaf appears in the Sepharia. Rachaf is, it says to hover. Okay, let's look at a couple of possibilities. First, we're going to look at the Targum, the ancient Aramaic translation by Onkelos. Onkelos translates as follows. Here it's interesting, actually. He highlights here the changes in Onkelos' translation, which is an interpretive translation. So he'll clarify. Like we had before, the Arahavat Tzadia Verekanya, the earth was desolate and empty. Vachashocha, that's the equivalent of choshech in Hebrew. Vachashocha, and the darkness, paras means was spread out. Doesn't say that in the Hebrew. It just says it was on. The darkness was on the face of the deep. Here it says the darkness was spread out, al, over, ape, also plural in Aramaic, like pene in Hebrew, ape, over the face of tehoma. Tehoma is the same as tehom, the deep. Virucha, rucha in Aramaic is the same as ruach in Hebrew, spirit or wind. But here it tells you that it's, here he tells you that it's God. But what does he do? Rucha min kadam Hashem. That's Hashem's name there, abbreviation for Hashem's name. And a spirit, min kadam, literally means from before. A spirit from before God, that's the spirit of God, is the spirit that's sort of going forth from God, or a wind that's going forth from God. Wind of God, we have to also consider wind of God, or powerful spirit, right? Okay. Menashva. Now, menashva is how he's translating the word mirachefet. Menashva is from the Hebrew word root, which is in Aramaic the same, nashav. The root nashav is how we describe when wind blows. People might know the phrase in Hebrew, mashiv haruach, which means God causes the wind to blow. We would say ruach noshevet or minashevet, which means the wind is blowing. So a wind or a spirit from before God was blowing. Now, does a spirit blow or does a wind blow? And the fact that he says from before God implies that it's a wind. A wind, so the spirit of God, powerful wind, or wind of God. And a wind from before God, Menashva, is blowing al apemaya. Okay, we didn't do the rest of the verse yet, but we get to Menashva is blowing. So that one possibility of Mirachef means it's blowing, the wind, and then we're definitely talking, if we say that, we're definitely talking about a wind. But as you see from the Targum, just because you're talking about a wind doesn't mean this word here doesn't mean God. Okay? It could still mean God and it still mean wind. And some of the commentaries do understand it that way. Okay, let's look at Rashi, famous commentator, my ancestor. Wink. He says here, V'ruach Elohim mirachafet. Okay, now Rashi's going to say something very enigmatic. And I don't want to grapple with the enigmatic thing he says because it's not the purpose of this class. We will acknowledge that it's enigmatic. We will acknowledge that we don't understand it, but we're going to take from it what is relevant for us, okay? He says these words, Kisei hakavod omeid ba'avir, the throne of glory is standing in the air, umirachef, and it is mirachef. He doesn't translate the verb, he just repeats the verb, and it's doing this act of mirachef. However, considering that he said it's standing in the air, then which verb would you think most closely matches that description?
Hover.
Hover. Okay. It sounds like he's saying hover. Al Pnei Hamayim, the throne of glory is standing in the air, hovering al panei hamayim, which that's the rest of the verse, and I'll just hand it to you here ahead of time, on the face of the water, beruach piv shel hakadosh baruch hu, through the spirit or wind of the mouth of the Holy One, blessed is He. Very enigmatic phrase. Uvima amaro, and through his ma'amar means his saying. Through the, and that's why some people said breath. The spirit of his mouth, or the wind of his mouth, which in this context could mean breath, of the Holy One, blessed is He, and his saying, his speech, the throne of glory is hovering over the face of the water. What does that mean? I don't have a clue. Let's keep reading here, because it's interesting what he describes now. Keyona, like a
Dove.
like a dove, hamirachefet al hakein, like a Yona, a dove does this verb, mirachefet, over the nest. What does a dove do over the nest? It hovers over the nest. Okay, he's describing whatever this Ruach Elohim is. He describes it as the throne of glory, standing in the air, hovering over the water by the breath of God and his speech. No idea. But then he says, like a, what did I say? A dove hovering over the nest. And here he says a French word. In French, this is acobtir. I don't know what that means in French, but it sounds a lot like what? Acobtir. Sounds like a helicopter, a copter. Acobtir, a copter. So I don't know the etymology of a helicopter, but what does a helicopter do? It hovers, right? It goes up, goes down, it kind of hovers in place, right? Goes forward and backwards too, side to side, yeah. But what's remarkable about what makes a helicopter different from like an airplane is its hovering capability. And he uses some word that seems to be related to the etymology for helicopter to describe the action that is happening of this, what it seems to be a breath of God or a spirit of God over the water. It's standing in the air. It's hovering there. Okay. So the spirit of God or the wind of God or powerful wind is hovering or blowing. And now let's finish the verse. Once again, al panei, like we had before, on the face of or over the face of hamayim. What's hamayim? Hey, suffix, definite article, the. And mayim is, go for it.
Waters.
Waters, right. You notice water is plural too. It's another one of these plural nouns that is singular but plural at the same time, and there's a lot to say about that, and we have very little time. A little insight into why they say that water is a plural noun. Why is water plural? And what is it plural of? Okay. What is it a plural of? So what some say is that water is a plural, mayim. Mayim is a plural of the Hebrew word ma. And what does the Hebrew word ma mean? The Hebrew word ma means what. And it's interesting, what and water. But water is what's plural. Why is water what's? Because what means a sort of a lack of what? Like what? There's no identity. So mayim, it has no color. It has no taste. It has no form. It shapes the vessel that it goes into. It has no shape, no color, no taste, and it dissolves things. Also, it disintegrates things that go into it into nothing. So water is described as sort of like it's a whole group, it's a whole collection of what? It's mayim. And this is one of the mystical reasons for the mikveh. The mikveh is the pool of water. We're going to see that word come up in this chapter. The mikveh mayim, the pool of water that when a person goes in, and we typically think in Jewish terms, you may not all be familiar with this, that the mikveh, the water, the ritual waters are used to move people from a state of so-called tum'ah or spiritual impurity, which is a terrible translation, to a status of tahara or spiritual purity, if you will. That's a deep concept we don't have time for, but the translation is horribly inadequate. But how does it do so? So many people understand it. When I say people, I don't mean scholars. I mean non-scholars. Think it's because it's cleaning you. So you go into the water and you're bathed and you're clean and the impurity is washed away. And now you're clean. And they even call tum'ah uncleanness and tahara cleanness. And that's also totally wrong. I have a whole class on this on Tanakh Talk in my Tanakh Talk series. One of the classes, who knows which one. It might be this week's Parsha, actually. It might be Tazria or Mitzorah, which is next week. One of those I actually discuss this concept of purity and impurity, Tum'ah and Tahara. But no, actually what's going on when a person immerses himself in the mikveh, and this is part of the conversion process as well, is their essence, or their spiritual essence, is said to dissolve into the water. To dissolve into the water. They become dissolved. They become nullified. And when they emerge from the water, a new form emerges. They are reformed. They're reborn into a new form. So the water dissolves, and then they emerge from the water new. So whatever was before is gone, and now there's something new that emerges. That's why this is part of the conversion process. So mayim, which means water, is in plural because it is a conglomeration of whatness, of lack of identity, and it dissolves the prior identity, and then a new identity emerges. Okay, there's more to be said about that, but it's not for now. Okay, so our sort of final translation or options for translation is, and the earth or the land was desolate and empty, or exceedingly empty. What do we say? Astonishingly empty, or primordial energy and emergent primordial matter. And darkness was over the face of the deep, or of the abyss, or of the expanse. And the Spirit of God, or the wind of God, or powerful wind, was hovering, or is hovering, or blowing over the face of the water. Okay? Question.
When you hovered your cursor over Miracheset, sorry, it showed hover, but also the other translation, which was relax or go soft. So that would suggest that it's not a powerful wind; it's something still. Maybe?
Depends. I wouldn't conclude that. First of all, I'm not sure what context that's being brought from. I'd have to open a concordance and be like, oh, where else does this verb appear, and see if that's true. Let's assume some scholar actually worked on this and has something thoughtful to contribute. It could be. I'm not so familiar with that usage offhand, but let's say it's accurate to grow soft or relax. Okay. Does it mean that the wind itself was growing soft, or was it softening something else? Okay, and I will contend that the wind was softening something else. Why? Because this verb is in the active form and not in the reflexive form or passive. So it's not saying something about itself. It's saying something of how it was acting on something. Okay, it was not reflective, saying this is how it was acting towards itself or its state of being. It's saying what it was doing, what it was actively acting upon something. And it tells us upon the face of the waters. So if you want to use it as not blowing or hovering over, but softening, it was softening the face of the water. What could that mean? I don't know, but it's food for thought, and I could think about it, and it may relate to some comments I had meant to say about this verse. But before I say anything I want to say, I want to hear what you have to say. Any other comments from the studio or questions?
It could kind of be like when a muscle relaxes, it expands, and it could be expanding over in that way, or like
Okay,
kind of how
I
soft
accept
dough
that.
will.
I accept that, and I'll even tell you that that's what some of the commentaries say, that God was introducing, if you will, an atmosphere at this point. And when I say commentary, I'm not talking about somebody who wrote this a week ago or a year ago or 10 years ago or 100 years ago. I'm talking about medieval commentaries like Ramban, for example, says this, who lived in the 13th century. And he talks about how God was introducing air, avir, he says, air between the layers of water and what the choshech he identifies, he calls it Aish, which he's referring to the primordial fire, which in his view, in his philosophical view, we talk about the four elements: earth, fire, wind, water. So he says the Tehom, I'm responding to you, so don't mind if I expand a little bit. The Tehom was the deep, he says, the abyss was made up of the layer of the element of earth, which was at the bottom. Above it was water, and earth and water together are called Tehom. It's like the bottom layers of the creation. And then above that, he said, was Choshech. Choshech was on the Tehom. Choshech was over the earth and the water. And Choshech identifies with the element of fire, interestingly enough. It says the primordial fire was Choshech, was dark, was not light. And this is really not so far off from what you might consider the energy in the universe, okay, before even there was visible light, okay? He's describing that as Aish, the dark primordial fire. So there was earth, water, and then, so to speak, darkness or fire, which he says are the same here in this context. So the darkness was not just the absence of light. The darkness represents an actual substance that's described as darkness. And there's a lot to say. If you look at Isaiah chapter 45, verse, I don't remember, you'll tell me, where it says, a very famous verse, God says, he is Yotzer Or, he forms the light, Uvore Choshech, and creates the darkness. Oseh Shalom, he makes peace, Uvore Ra, and creates evil. Ooh, darkness, evil. Aren't these parallel phrases? Forms the light, creates the dark, makes peace, creates evil. So light and peace are synonymous in that verse, and darkness and evil are synonymous in that verse. I'm just throwing things out there to give you food for thought. So much to say, it's impossible to cover. But the Ramban says you have the Tehom, the deep, is the earth and the water. And then above that was the Choshech, the darkness, which is the fire, he calls it. And then God begins to fill in the gap between the fire, the Choshech, the darkness, and the water. He starts inflating it with air. He inserts the atmosphere around the earth, between the water and outer space, the energies that were surrounding the earth at that time, the dark energies. And I don't think this has anything to do with dark energy that they talk about in science today, dark energy, dark matter. I would not relate these things, because when they say dark, they don't mean dark in terms of dark like we do. They just mean that it's undetectable. The idea of dark matter and dark energy is that science has to account for the presence of matter and energy in order to make their calculations work that we cannot detect. In other words, there must be matter and energy in the universe that we can't detect in order for the observations that we're making to make sense. And so that invisible, undetectable energy, which really just means it's imaginary or conjectured, but based on their calculations, it must be there. It's just we can't see it. They call it dark matter and dark energy. I don't think that's what's being referred to in the verse here, because dark means we're ignorant of it. That's all they mean when they say dark. We don't see it. But they don't actually know what it looks like. They're not contending that it's like dark. They just don't see it. Now, here, there's something called darkness. So question, what does darkness mean here? I don't want to give a definitive meaning. The literal translation for choshech is darkness. Is this the primordial fire? Some say no, it's the primordial element of earth, which is the most physical and therefore the most dark of the elements. Some say it's the absence of light. Simple as that. Some say it's some kind of substance like we find in Egypt in the plague of darkness, that the Hebrew says vayamesh choshech, that the choshech, the verb there, vayamesh, is based on the word that we mentioned last time when the commentaries were talking about the tohu and the vohu, and that they didn't have mamash, they didn't have substance. The tohu had no substance, no mamash. Mamash is substance. So Vayamesh choshech means the darkness in the plague of darkness in Egypt was substantive. It was a thick darkness. It was a tangible darkness. You could feel it. What was that mysterious substance that darkened Egypt? That the oral tradition tells us the Egyptians were frozen in their places. They couldn't move. The darkness surrounded them and was so thick that if you lit a candle, you couldn't see it. And they were unable to move through it. Very interesting. There was some type of a substance that was called darkness. Okay. Someone asked about evil. Some say darkness being the absence of light. They speak, we don't have time to go into length about it right now, but they speak about the whole creation process as what's called heder. Heder means concealment. That, as I mentioned in the very first class, that the creation of something from nothing was really the creation of nothing from something. That is, prior to the creation, all that existed was God's infinite essence, which is totally unbounded. But we talked about this with why Bereshit started with the letter Bet and not Aleph. Why the name of God that's used in the creation is Elohim rather than the Yud name. Elohim, which implies strictness or restrictiveness. And the Bet, which is the number 2, it's the multiplicity, it's division rather than unity. Because the created world is finite. It's a reduction of God's infinity. The creation, so the world is a concealment. The physical created world is a concealment of God's infinity. And any concealment of God's infinity, his essence, is by definition the opposite of good. Because God that's where the word God comes from, good, okay? Or good comes from God, whichever way. But God is the ultimate good. The concealment of God is by definition a reduction of good. What do you call a reduction of good? Evil. Just like a reduction of light is darkness, right? So darkness is associated with evil in as much as the reduction of light is dark, and the reduction of God's infinite essence of goodness is evil. Now, I'm giving you stuff to chew on. Now, what I thought someone was going to ask, and I'm going to look at the comments now, and I'm going to try to wrap it up because it's late. Does this word break the over-under rule? Masculine nouns are things generally on top and feminine those below. So you want to say it breaks the over-under rule. Oh, because wind is on top, and wind is sort of a spiritual thing. Ruach is spiritual, and therefore it should be the other way. This is a great question. I'm going to answer you in 3 ways. 1, I don't know. 2, I didn't reveal this to you, but I'm going to reveal to you now. Sometimes ruach is masculine, usually feminine, sometimes masculine. This is one of the feminine forms. So it's not excluded from that because we do have masculine wind or masculine spirit. We'll have to deal with it when we get there. So it doesn't totally break the rule. 3, ruach is a word that is associated with the soul. The soul is a feminine construct. Neshama in Hebrew is feminine. Nefesh, which is another word for spirit or soul, is another word that, though it appears masculine, is feminine. Nefesh is feminine. Ruach is feminine. There are 5 words in Hebrew that are associated with the soul. Okay? One is nefesh, feminine. One is ruach, feminine. One is neshama, feminine, as you can see from the ending neshama. One is chaya, which means life, feminine. And the final one is yechida, which means singular being, feminine. Okay? The soul is feminine. Why is the soul feminine? We'll save it for another discussion. T. Bishop says it's Greek. You're saying the copter thing, the helicopter? Yeah, it sounds Greek, but I'm saying even in French, there's that Rashi quotes, there's some shades of that. Notice God doesn't create the earth or the water, they were already there. Okay, so just to respond to that, yes and no, because the first verse either translates as God created. This is bigger than I have time to respond. I'm going to talk fast. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. Now, those who understand it that way, understand that when it says the earth, it's speaking of the physical realm and everything in it. And there are more ways to demonstrate that from that verse, but I can't right now. So it's implied in the word et haaretz, that it's not just literally physical earth, ground, but sort of everything in the lower part of creation. And et hashamayim is everything in the higher realm of creation. And that would include things like water. And then when we see the water there, we're like, oh, that was part of the initial creation of aretz, which now we're going to particulate. Okay. According to Rashi, who says, in the beginning of the creating of the heavens and earth, Rashi reveals to us that the Torah is not teaching us a step-by-step, first God did this and then God did that. It's just focusing in on a chapter that took place within the creation process. And so we're just zooming in on an event. And in this event, these things were already here because they had been created prior. But the purpose of the verse was not to tell us what was created and when it was created. It's to tell us that during the creation, some things went on that we're going to talk about in the following verses. Okay. Could it be a melting of ice? Could what be a melting of ice? Could the softening be a melting of the ice? Softening the face of the water is like glaciers melting into water. I hadn't considered that. Maybe it's all I have time to say. God separated the waters from above and the waters from below. Space is water, air is water, sea is water. Go deep in the sea. There are underwater lakes. Water is more dense. God created the separations. Okay, you've said a lot. I don't even have the headspace right now to digest what you said. So it's all going to have to wait. the one thing I thought someone was gonna bring up and they didn't. Maybe I shouldn't bring it up. Maybe I should or I shouldn't. But it is related to the remark about darkness being evil. Is this phrase, and the Spirit of God hovered over the waters. The Messianics love this. Love this. Why do they love it? Because I'm going to drop a bomb and I'm going to drop the mic and then we're going to meet again next week. Is because there's a midrash that says, analyzing this verse, the Ruach Elohim, and the Spirit of God in this verse, the midrash says refers to Mashiach. Ooh. So the Spirit of God is Mashiach, and he was present in the creation process. So doesn't that mean that that Mashiach is divine, and therefore their man, God, Messiah is one with the Creator? Because here God's creating the earth, and the Medrash says that this description here is referring to Mashiach, the Spirit of God, in verse 2. There you have it. Mashiach is divine, and Mashiach is God, and he's the Creator. And there's Christianity on a silver platter. And it was provided to us by the helpful, friendly rabbis of the Midrash. So now that I dropped that bomb on you, the answer is the same answer that it is to every other so-called proof that these people try to peddle. And it's so funny that, like, there's no oral tradition, and we don't listen to the rabbis, and we don't believe in the rabbis, and the rabbis tried to conceal that so-and-so is the true Messiah, and they changed the Torah. They're trying to conceal it. Oh, by the way, the rabbis also told us that, so-and-so is the Mashiach in this verse. Come on, take your pick. Were the rabbis his friends or not? Right? The clear answer is no, and that's not what it means. And you have manipulated this text to bring forth your fake theology. So I thought someone would bring it up. No one brought it up, but I want to expose it, but I don't have time now. So remind me at the beginning of next class, we'll expose that silly line of argumentation. Okay, thank you all for coming. And we'll have to entertain more about this. I hope it was instructive how we translated the verse, what the meaning of the words are, some of the grammar. I know it's an information overload. I am trying to move through the text at a decent pace, even though it took us 2 hours to do one verse. It'll get easier. This is a particularly hard verse, as I mentioned before. So I hope to see you guys again. Review the class and you'll pick up more. Okay. Thank you. Have a great night. Bye.
Thank you. That was awesome. Bye.
Yes, thank you very much.
You're welcome. You're welcome.